into it to kind of explain why we're here. So Julia, the amazing Julia Newman, concepted and created this museum in spite of everything. And we're going to hear the story a little bit from her. But just to toot her horn, because she's bad at it. So she had this idea, concepted and built this whole place with literally her own bare hands and some amazing helpers. And we concepted this evening over some afternoon tea. And we were like, wouldn't it be amazing just to create a space for us to gather and have provocative conversations and to give this amazing platform longevity and a legacy? I personally am obsessed with systems and thinking about systems. And obviously tonight is all about the systems that we're probably not always aware of, that we're existing in. So work, health, motherhood, patriarchy. There's so much working against us. And tonight is the first in a 4-part series, and it's about naming them. So we're not going to solve everything tonight.
No? Next time.
We'll try.
Next week.
We'll solve it.
Yeah. We're going to solve world peace and then all go home. But what we're going to do is name everything and get into it. And then we're going to tackle everyone one by one, because we want these types of conversations to actually have action and not be about moaning. Because when you understand and can point to what you're living in, then it's only then that you can actually change it. Julia,
you said everything.
Tell us about the concept and the idea behind the museum.
I mean, thankfully, I'm in advertising, and the name should explain itself, but it's called Museum in Spite of Everything for a reason. Mostly because I have no fucking business making a museum. So that was definitely a driving force behind wanting to do one. And secondly, I just had a baby, and I knew life was going to change, and I couldn't go to parties anymore. So I brought the party into the home. Yeah. And with the name, the way it is, I wanted to create a platform where people can come in and talk about things that they've done in spite of everything. So the first exhibit, that's no longer here, but if you were here a couple of weeks ago or months ago, you probably have seen it. It was called No Boys Allowed. No offense, love boys. But it was about the history of women's signature sneakers and what women have been through in, sports and fashion and design. And it was told in like an interactive girls' room kind of way. You can see it on Instagram. But no more. We're moving on to bigger and better things. And I'd love to introduce Tara. She's going to be moderating this evening. Tara obviously has had an incredible career. And it's been 26 years, something like that. Oh, should we not? Okay.
Sure. Celebrate.
Yeah. And I warned her before, but Tara is here tonight, even though she's not once invited me to a rep dinner.
Yeah, no, can't be true.
The things we overcome. No, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're moderating this, because you're perfect for it.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Tara Averill. Carla and Julia pulled me into this. Carla was my first interview on the podcast I just started this year with my daughter, Fiona, who is in college. Can't be here tonight. And the concept is an intergenerational conversation about things that matter. And we decide what matters on any given day. And that's who we bring on the podcast. So I love the notion of an intergenerational conversation because in terms of systems, like telling stories to help the next generation so we can maybe leave the world a little bit better than we found it. I don't know, that might be a little idealistic at this point. So that's kind of how I came into this place of doing this project. So here's our fabulous guests. We have Alexis Barad Cutler. Alexis is a writer and the founder of Not Safe for Mom Group, which is a 41,000 strong community for unfiltered conversations on motherhood, beauty, and the body. She's also the co-founder of Chamber of Mothers, and her Substack, In Our Own Skin, is amazing. Truly amazing. I just spent 2 days like, oh my God, she's speaking truth. She's speaking truth. So incredible. And then we have Sarah Collison. Sarah is the CEO, it's a hot title, Havas, New York, previously the managing director at Joan, and is a vocal advocate for working mothers in advertising. And we have Dr. Kristen Drake. Doctor.
That's better than she.
Doctor Krista Day.
No, it's not better.
Dr. Krista Day is a psychiatrist specializing in perinatal and women's mental health, also the director of women's mental health at Woodhull Hospital. I've been there. That's a very intense place. Oh, yes, I have.
We can talk about that.
And it's a whole other thing, and is an associate professor at NYU. So I'm going to get right into it and ask Sarah, who won Working Mom of the Year in 2025.
Hey.
I don't know who. Someone decided that.
Someone decided that.
Who decided that?
And then someone on the team, who knows how
That
they decided
is-
it. I got it, so it's fine.
You got it.
Yeah.
So here's
What?
is there a Working Dad of the Year award? Do you know who got it?
You know, I don't think there is. And if there is one, there needs to be very harsh criteria based on things like remembering a school schedule. You know, do they know where all their friends' names? Things like that. Just to check.
So basically, by any metric, you're crushing it, right? You have this incredible C-suite
Depends
role.
on the day.
Yeah.
Depends on the day.
You have this C-suite role. You started as a CEO at a huge advertising agency with a 7-month-old.
No, a toddler.
Pregnant.
So I now have a 5-year-old and I have a 7-month-old. So I started 2.5 years ago. I was 37 when I started. 1 year in, I got pregnant. We were trying for a while to be pregnant, and it didn't work and didn't work. I didn't think it was going to. And then suddenly it did. Kind of just when I was getting to grips with this new role, right? And on the one hand, very happy about it. On the other hand, I was like, fuck, I've got to be a fucking pregnant CEO? Jesus Christ, how do you do that? So did that. Wasn't the easiest thing to do. And so now have a 5-year-old and a 7-month-old.
So as it relates to a system that could be revisited, or I guess we could just two-prong it and say what systems are working, because you're doing something right, and what systems are not working or could be revisited. And again, we're just naming, we're not solving today.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm in a very fortunate position, I think, because number one, I can afford help, right? I can afford a nanny that comes in and is a real part of our family and arrives at the door at 8 a.m. and I'm like, dear God, take them, let me run out the door. I also work in an industry, I mean, a lot of us do in this room, that is, it's pretty flexible. And I had my children after COVID. And it's funny talking to moms who had kids pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? Pre-COVID, you missed dinner every single night. You were in the office till 7 p.m. And I know the flexibility is changing a little bit now, but there is still that intrinsic flexibility that didn't exist before. Like, I really make it a hard and fast rule, and there are some fast people here, that I leave the office at 5 or just before 5. If I'm in the office, I leave, and I get home by 5:30. I put my phone in a drawer. If I have it next to me, I'll pick it up. I put it in a drawer until 7:30 p.m. As people know, I'm totally uncontactable in that time. So I think our industry, even though there's a huge way to go, has made strides and is in a bit of a transition. It's also another system, and this is a self-built one, and it's based on an individual. It's my husband, who is a probably would win Working Dad of the Year, to be honest with you. And, you know, he leans in, he takes up the slack, he really is, it's a real partnership, to be honest. He probably does more than me, to be honest with you. So, look, these are things that are working, and it's making this possible, but it's still so fucking hard. Right? So my husband's away this week. So my day yesterday, wake up, do a whole day of work, close my laptop at 5 p.m., do an hour and a half of kid stuff, bath time, dinner time, get them to sleep, come out, apartment is ruined with like food and baby stuff, tidy it all up, start working at probably 8:30, like 10:30, close my laptop, and I'm like, cool, now I can have a bit of time to relax on my own. And obviously you don't, right? So I think that the working life is still based on a world where men worked and women didn't and stayed at home, and mashing those two together, it's impossible. And there are some days you feel like you're winning, and there's some days you feel like you're really losing, and it really takes a sacrifice of self. I think to do that, you have to put your own passions and your own hobbies just to the side and sort of forget about them. I also really noticed when I was pregnant, I mean, there were amazing individuals around me. So my colleagues and my husband really kind of supporting everything I was doing. But there would be these moments, little tiny moments, where I'd go, fuck, this whole world is not set up for someone to be in leadership and be pregnant. So I remember being at a work drinks, like a very specific thing, and I was like 6 months pregnant. Work drinks, and there was no chair, right? And it's such a tiny thing. And then there was like, oh, there's some chairs over there. And I went, but if I go sit over there, I'm not in the conversation with the clients that's over here, right? And so it's just such a small moment. But if anyone who's been pregnant in this room knows that moment when your back really hurts, your feet really hurt, and there's just not a knowledge and acceptance of the physicality of being pregnant. So, yeah, those are a few.
Carla, this makes me think about Moody. Carla Stewart is a partner at Tangerine. She makes the entire business run. She's a creative recruiter, and she's the co-founder of Moody, a hormone tracking app that's reframing women's hormonal health as a source of strength, not a career disruptor. So quickly, because of the time thing and with the day and the work day and the female body, can you talk about Moody and how you came up with the concept of doing that because of the system of the way the work day works with women and bodies?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of actually came after starting Moody, and then coming into this, I sit at this really interesting cross-section of work and health, and believe that you cannot have success without your health being optimized. And one of the things that shocked me the most, and when you're building an app and a company and having to delve in, and that's actually how Kristen and I met, and she taught me everything I knew, but you're like, holy fuck. I didn't even know what a hormone was, and that was the genesis behind starting it. And then you learn, okay, so women's bodies operate on this very complicated monthly cycle, and the working system was created around the men have a daily hormonal streak where their testosterone spikes in the morning and in the afternoon. And that's how work was created. And that's not anyone's fault, because that was what happened at the time. We were just having millions of children. And then you throw millions, literally millions. And then you throw in fertility, getting pregnant, which Sarah went through in spades, being pregnant at work, and then postpartum, and Julia's going to talk about this more, but that's what's been the most interesting for me, and really kind of propelled my current work, is thinking about success and reframing the working systems that we operate in, because there's a better way for us to work. But we're so far behind, because then we would have to completely change to a matriarchal system. But we'll get there.
So I'm torn between whether to go to Dr. Kristen Drake, because you can actually talk about the information we know. But I screwed up the intros. Julia Newman is the CCO and a partner at Le Truc, which is part of Publicis Group. They're the most creative, cool part of Publicis Group. I just decided to add that. And also the founder of this space, and also a brand new mom. So I was thinking you do a question quickly on the hormones, because hormones are now up. We had the best conversation the other day. The story we hear is that women's health is underfunded and under-researched. However, you said something way more interesting and sharper, which is it isn't. We have the research, we have the information, we know how to treat most of it, we just don't. So what is the system that's keeping us undertreated when there is the information?
I mean, it is true, and I think we're right to be incensed about the low level of focus, and even lower, I don't even know what to call it, it's sort of anti-focus. These days now, if you are an NIH-funded researcher, if anyone out there is an NIH-funded researcher, I'm sorry for what's happened to you. And the focus of your research is only on women and does not include men, it has been defunded. That's happened. You can guess how long that's been. And so it's true that the amount of research and research dollars, and then, sort of biomedical development that happens as a result of that is pales in comparison. You can look at the differences in sort of outcomes and treatment development for breast cancer versus prostate cancer, right? That's the sort of classic example. So that's all true. But the current state of medicine is such that, the vast majority of what any of us in this room will need is available. We know what to do about, mood and anxiety disorders that develop during a pregnancy or after. We know what to do to treat the sort of consequences and symptoms related to perimenopause and menopause. We know what to do about discomfort and difficulty for the vast majority of gynecologic conditions, including, mood and physical conditions. And it's not done, I think, for a number of complex reasons that are somewhat individual to a system or an individual physician, but the overarching thing, is patriarchy and capitalism, where we really don't like it. This was part of our conversation, and this is a little bit of me pulling the curtain back, but we, physicians, really don't like it when we don't know what to do. It's a very uncomfortable thing, and we're not taught what to do in those situations. We're taught that we should be authoritative and that patients should be grateful for our knowledge and for our help. But it's capitalist, right? And the only other thing, it's the only system in capitalism that I can think of that's like this, where you just like do something, whether or not it's what the person asked for, whether or not it's effective, whether or not it's helpful, even if it's harmful, and you still get paid. Right? Does anybody else have a job like that?
Kind of. Yes.
Oh, you do? Well, it's
She sold a lot of Pop-Tarts last year.
I literally was about to say that.
No, but your client was pleased, right? And I think the thing I want everybody to know, we're not solving this, but I think to name it is to walk around aware of it, is that you're the client, right? Like, I work for my patients. It's not the other way around. And I think we've come to, and a lot of us in medicine have come to sort of stand on the regard, the sort of social status of being a physician, the power, and that gets intersected with all of our individual neuroses and needs. And this is an example where, women, because we're acculturated to be accommodating and helpful, even to the person who we're paying, not just supposed to, even the person who we're paying to help us, you end up walking out of the room with their shit too. And you still hurt. I think that if we know that that's what's happening, then we can be a little bit more insistent upon and appropriately entitled to be helped by the people we pay to help us.
I have a question.
Yes.
I remember I read somewhere, it could be completely wrong, that in medical school, the part about menopause is like 5 minutes of what you
there's zero. Even in an OBGYN residency, so, you go to medical school for 4 years and then you choose the specialty you're going to go to, sorry if everybody knows this, and then you can choose to be an OBGYN and you get 4 additional years of training after you're an MD. And even in OBGYN training, I'm taking a course right now offered by the Menopause Society. I'm a psychiatrist. I didn't go through an OBGYN, but I work with pregnant and postpartum people and women across their lifespans. And so there's a course the Menopause Society offers and a test. I'm going to take a standardized test in June. It's my first standardized test in like 20 years. So wish me luck. I have to be proctored. I was like a video. It's like very weird. There are a lot of OBGYNs in the course because they didn't learn this either. I thought, I'm a psychiatrist, I didn't learn this stuff, but they don't learn it either. So some people get 0. In medical school, I don't know, it's not a full lecture.
So it's not like necessarily that a doctor has this information and they're holding it back.
Well, you can find out, right? Like, it's not hard to know. Like, it happens all the time. This is also something to know. It happens all the time that someone will walk into my office and I don't know off the top of my head what I should do. But it's my responsibility to tell them that and then find out and then call them back in and then help. We could together look on, like, in 5 minutes, you could see what to do about, there's like an AI that helps with this. We have a lot of tools. It's willful, I think, because again, there are many things that the doctor wouldn't know just straight away, but the thing over and over again, and this is like what's happening in this moment, the thing over and over again that people are turned away for is like menopause and perimenopause.
But it sounds like it's that moment of saying, I don't know, and I need to get back to you and do some work, that the medical profession doesn't seem to be that pumped to say to their patients.
Yeah.
It's more like, do this and do this.
Or this sort of like,
take some
Advil.
Yeah. So
exercise.
So the idea that doctors like know everything, like we're moving into this terrain now in this conversation of like the unspeakable, which is where I think Alexis comes in. We had the most amazing conversations. I was so excited I get to talk about eating disorders, one of my favorite topics, body image, anyway, all this stuff. So Alexis pays very close attention in her work when women begin to publicly articulate experiences that feel private or hard to name. So what conversations feel most active to you right now that feel hard to name, sticky?
So I have a 14-year-old, and 14 years ago, going through postpartum depression, there really wasn't a lot of narrative around that experience, and we didn't know what to call these things. I remember thinking, I guess it's normal to cry 5 times a day, every single day for weeks after having a baby. And I didn't know that there was an actual name for it and that there was a cure. I remember when I went to my OBGYN for like one of the follow-ups, I was like, just sitting there. She goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." And she's like, "The light has gone from your eyes. And I want to ask you some questions." So she starts asking me some questions like, "Do you feel like you don't bond with your baby? Do you ever think your baby's trying to harm you?" These are real things. And I was like, "Oh my God, did you read my diary?" Like, I had no idea. So I bring that up because I see there's a parallel with this. We had a murky understanding or willfulness to not use information that we had about women in the perinatal phase of life. And now we have so much information, a million different blogs, motherhood communities, it's great. But now those moms, me, who had the babies 14 years ago, are now entering perimenopause. And again, we're in this ether of like, I don't know, do you have chronic migraines because of a physiological or back issue, or is this related to the depletion of your estrogen? And we're being, I guess forced is a little bit too drastic of a word, dramatic, but we have to create the architecture, right, to support our own systems that need support, but we're doing it individually, only with each other, sharing stories, but we have to do the research ourselves. And I think we're in a similar phase as we were years ago. I'm sure you can speak to that too, in the postpartum world. And now we're here with perimenopause and menopause, and just kind of like, I don't
and
know.
Postmenopause.
And postmenopause, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is a similar situation where I think people are really on their own, and therefore there aren't the quality controls, right, that are like part of a medical system. Like there are some benefits, obviously, around the science and proper application of treatments, but here we are again in the sort of like Wild West where you kind of design a treatment plan for yourself, and then you ask a robot on the Teladoc site to like mail it to you, and then you can get it. Yeah. And some of the treatments are powerful things that shouldn't be obtained that way.
I think in what you were talking about before is that there was no system to support a pregnant woman at work, and how you kind of had to create it for yourself.
Well, I think it's interesting because there are individuals and there are ways of, and there's sort of people who would lean in, to your point, if we're sharing stories and have individual action, but creating a system around these pieces, it doesn't really exist apart from very standardized things. And especially, I was just thinking as you guys were talking, a knowledge of perimenopause and menopause and how it affects people in the workplace. We've spoken a lot about this. Like how interesting to go, how can we really help this generation of women deal with it? And, I think there is actually more conversation now, to your point, around pregnancy and childbirth and postpartum. There's more to happen, but there is more than there ever has been, and that's amazing. But there are all these other phases in women's life. And how can we make sure that they lean into it and come out of it set up for success and don't see it as a moment to retreat, right?
So can I make a really quick point? Listening to you is like, so that when you think of the system of capitalism and everything you're saying, there is a truth, to name it, that women are a problem to be solved and men are to be optimized. Yes. And that is kind of like when we think about taking it forward, so our mental health, our pregnancies are monetized. And the same with perimenopause now, right? So actually us not understanding ourselves is very profitable.
Well, I think, I wonder, we were talking about this, me having brain fog, not being able to remember words in the middle of Zooms, forgetting who I literally just talked to, benefits a young man who wants my job, quite frankly. So I think the system is pretty invested in me, not having the care that I need. See you later, Yeah. Julia just had a baby, unpartnered. How old's your baby?
6 months.
6 months old, unpartnered, and is just fucking doing it on her own. And your baby was preemie, so it was nothing went according to plan.
Nothing.
So I was thinking, you encountered systems like medical, legal, employment, your body, all the things. Do you want to talk about that?
I empathize with the conversation, even going through pregnancy, and I'm fucking old, guys. I thought,
how old are you?
I am 42 years old.
That's not old.
Oh my God.
Julia, 42 is old.
I just heard someone had a baby at 57.
Yeah.
Maybe I wish I would have had it a little sooner. You know, I can tell my body's getting older.
challenging.
Yeah.
It's
Legit,
challenging.
it's challenging.
Also, like you're like a senior citizen when you walk into a hospital, and like I don't know how much more blood pressure someone needs to measure, but like yes, I felt like I felt very well taken care of, but I had a plan, I had a system in place on like how I wanted things to go, and medically I wasn't able to do any of it. And I was looking to the doctors to give me advice. And I ended up in the hospital and like went through all the stages of like check boxes. For me personally, I had preeclampsia and I had to give birth early because my blood pressure was too high. And when I got to the hospital, and I think there is like maybe a backlash of this idea of like hospitals just want you to get a C-section. So now we try everything for you to have a natural birth, which is lovely, but also insane knowing my medical history and the preeclampsia. But they went through the motions. And I think the process of like going through the motions, if someone were to just stop and think and tell me, what would be a good idea? To not try this naturally, because the chances of that working out is about 5%. I would have not been on Pitocin, and I would have not been on magnesium, and I would have maybe seen my daughter right after birth. I couldn't see her because I was on magnesium, and there was no nurse that had time to like take me downstairs. So I just wish like the system, in my case, would have just turned on their brain and gave me advice in a moment where I was listening. Like, I don't need to, be in the hospital for 3 days trying to push something that doesn't work.
Well, then, and the other thing, and part of the genesis of this whole thing was returning to, and again, no one's fault, but tell the HR.
Right, yeah. So, medical insurance, very important topic. I tried to get my daughter onto medical insurance, and I got the birth certificate back, and the name was written wrong. So there is a certain time period that you have, and many of you probably noticed, to get your dependent onto your insurance, and I knew, dealing with the city, that was probably not going to happen if I was to wait for a new birth certificate that had the right name on it. So, I started to email HR, and HR emailed the other HR, and it turned into this whole thing. And they eventually just told me, upload the old certificate, which I did. And then the lady on the other side was saying, there's no father on your birth certificate. So you should get that fixed. And I did not quite know what to say, because I kind of couldn't believe that I have this in writing, right? And am I the first person to have a kid without a father on the birth certificate? I guess I was. So, those are things where I'm like, are we progressing, or are we not?
Right.
Like, who are you on the other end to email me this without thinking? And you have HR in your title. Like, aren't you a lawyer to begin with? Like, I don't understand the world.
Well, speaking of fathers and husbands and things like that, Carla is recently divorced, and we talked about divorce as a system. Marriage as a system and divorce as a system. How are you feeling the divorce, the system of being divorced works for you? Or how did you feel the system of being married works for you? Or taking a part of marriage? There's so many ways to do. I'm not articulating this.
I know. I think the short answer is, and we had dinner last week and we're talking about this, is I think there's an expectation for women to just make it work, because it's the system that is normal.
Make
right?
marriage work.
Make marriage work. And so I think, because there's two kind of parts to this answer, is that there's the emotional and kind of social judgment of making that decision. And then there's the legal system, which, holy fuck, we need a whole 2-hour panel on. But one thing that really shocked me is when we told our kids, who are almost 10 and almost 6, the reaction was, from our eldest, oh God, I'm so embarrassed. And I'm like, dude, you live in New York. Because that's how I felt, when I was 6. And he was like, And I was like, this, and I'm doing my whole chat and all the books. So you get like all these different types of families and 2 moms and 2 dads. And we actually also have many friends that have done what Julia's done. And still, he looked at me and said, yeah, but most people have a mum and a dad. So it really kind of floored me that it's very hard for us to kind of like break out of this expectation, which I think is why a lot of women stay in a system. And I had various comments that were like, I don't know, I just couldn't not live with my kids all the time. And they're like, oh my God, and you're saying that to me outside the school gates when my kids are right here, whilst you want me to stay in a marriage. It's a terrible example for like what's the better thing to do. And then the only thing to touch on, because it's a much bigger subject, is I was unbelievably floored at how stacked against women the system of getting divorced is, which is a human right, but it is unbelievably expensive. And so again, when a lot of women like aren't breadwinners and we're not taught, like, guys, get your don't let them control all the finances. Yeah, so there's kind of 2 sides to the coin.
And we live in a system of capitalism where your health care is tied to your job inexplicably, which makes, to me, 0 sense. And then I also think I want to pivot to dating, romance.
Cute.
Like that area. Dating, romance, body. I think like GLPs right now is a hot topic for women. It's very spicy. There's a lot of judgment about women who are doing it, not doing it, blah, blah, blah. And I think Alexis is the perfect person to talk about this. What do you think this conversation and how charged it is for people and how upset they are about it is really about?
I think that it's so charged because we keep doubling back on what we say, we think, and what we actually put in action. So, for example, we really don't like it when someone's like, I took a GLP to be skinny, or I got a neck lift because I didn't like looking old. You have to say, like there was something going on with a vein here, or like, my blood pressure, my sugars, that's why I went on a GLP. But you can't say, I did this for aesthetic reasons, and yes, those aesthetics do match a certain idea of Western beauty, blah, 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 because that's frowned upon. So we're telling women, on the one hand, just look good. Okay? Just be very, very tiny. But we don't really want to know how you did that. Like, just age gracefully. But we just want to think to ourselves that that's just your good genes and the fact that you're on some nice peptides or whatever. The beauty and the body that we have has to appear effortless to be acceptable. And it's not just the way men look at women, but it's how women talk about other women. And I think it's so charged because the conversation is so charged because we're having trouble taking an authentic and honest position on our actions and our behaviors.
Why do you think that is?
I wish I knew. I think, so the thing is, like, we all grew up in the same soil. The soil is poisoned. It's poisoned by capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy and all that stuff. So even if you're a woman, you're still going to grow up with those same internal biases, maybe not as loud as a man who constantly gets reinforced for what makes him different from a woman. But we still absorb that, being fat means that you're lazy, or looking old means you're no longer relevant to the conversation. And it's going to take a lot of effort to undo that and come up with a new language. Like all of these systems. Like it's going to take a lot of work.
It's interesting. I think people fall into 2 camps with this, and I have a lot of friends who get Botox, including myself, and I'm very outspoken about it. I'll come in and be like, look at it looks great, it looks amazing. And then another set who are, like you say, very, very cagey about it. There was one woman who shall remain nameless, looked incredible, and I said to her, I was like, what are you doing? Tell me what you're doing. She said, it's just happiness. Oh my God. And I kind of hated her a little bit because you're doing something. Just tell us. Like it's slightly unfeminist to me to say that, because I was like, well, But to your point, she's within a system that has influenced her behavior and goes, no, it is not. It is expected to look beautiful and it should be effortless. And actually admitting the effort is a failure.
But it goes to gatekeeping, resources, and community that you talked about, because we all were like, we're all doing it alone. And every single one of us were like, yes, we are doing it alone. Because community is not something that work, Havas, can't really do that. Like, our jobs are our jobs. Our companies are not going to give us community. We have our families, right? But my kids aren't going to be like, Mom, they're out of the Dottie estrogen patches. And
doesn't stick.
And meanwhile, though, I would say, like, I'm on multiple threads. I mean, I have multiple threads going with so many different women. There has been an estrogen patch shortage, and they knew about it. Yep. And like, no, I was like, the minute I found out, I went to multiple threads, and I was like, did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? And they were like, oh yeah, we struggled. And I was just sort of surprised that the immediate impulse isn't to think, oh, if I can't get it, that means other women can't get it. Hello? I'm sorry, but that's like a wake-up call of like, what are we doing?
Why do you think people are keeping that?
Gatekeepers? Well, it goes to gatekeeping, like the Botox, the this, the how much money you spend on it, People also, I think, are embarrassed to talk about how much money they spend on the beauty and the and all that stuff.
Health.
And health.
Longevity.
Yes. I do also think sometimes there is an odd female competitiveness, right? And I think we've probably all experienced it ourselves. We've probably all done it ourselves a little bit. I find it often with parenting, and we spoke about this on the phone. Like, I spend less time with my children than a stay-at-home mum would, right? And obviously I feel bad about that quite a lot of the time, even though I tell myself the quality I spend with them is great. It's quality, not quantity. But I have had dicks from other mothers. Like, last Mother's Day, I missed this Mother's Day breakfast in school. Because there are so many things in school. Like,
but they have it on like Tuesday.
Yeah, at like 10 a.m. Yes. I gotta come to that. And I got home, and my 5-year-old had like one single tear rolling down his face. He's like, you were the only mother not there. Clearly to bribe me to get an ice cream. And then in the playground the next day, this mom came up to me and was like, oh, we missed you at Mother's Day. She said, don't worry, Felix came and sat with us. It's fine, don't worry. Yeah. And I was like, that's a fraud, right? That's a bomb. And I don't know, is she doing it to make herself feel better? Is she doing it to establish her own position of what the choices that she's made? It's just a funny inter-female relationship and how that plays out.
Well, one of the things I wanted to do as an interactive exercise, but I didn't get enough sign-off on, is all of us write down, instead of a system, everybody has an index card here to write down a system that is really one that you would love to see redesigned and looked at over the 4-part series, is write a judgment you had this week about another woman. I will tell you some of mine that I've had over the years. I don't know if it was this week. I only took 6 weeks with both my kids' maternity. I don't see why you need a year. What are you doing? Like, I've literally had that thought because I was like, that was my particular circumstance, Or must be nice, you have a rich husband, you have time to blah, 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 right? These are not helpful. These are not helpful thoughts. This is not community thinking based in love. This is every man. That's us participating in patriarchal, capitalist, siloed, individual. You get yours.
I think it's an interesting conversation because what this leads me down thinking is we just need a bit of empathy. Mm-hmm. It's how you show up at work. It's how you show up with your friends. It's understanding, right? She could have said this so many ways. She could have just told you how amazing it was to have your son sitting with them.
Yeah, right. Lied to me and said
or like how proud. But I think we don't have enough examples of people living in different systems. And actually, I love Emma Greed's work because it's actually, I think, given this topic a lot of pride. Yeah, I don't go to coffee mornings because I'm working and paying the school fees or whatever it might be, or you want your kids to be proud of you for being something in the world. And I'm really happy that she's giving a voice to that, and she's getting backlash, right? Because there's not, and there's more and more, but there's not enough examples. Sarah's the breadwinner, and the reason Ryan is the way he is because, and so again, Ryan wouldn't be saying that about you if it was the other way around. We're so attuned men are so amazing. With my ex, whenever we were on a plane, everyone was like, oh, you're so such a good dad. Is anyone telling any of us that we're good moms?
For holding their child on the plane. Yeah, we had that conversation. I was just going to add that I think, in scarcity, envy is a very natural human response. And like what we're talking about is that none of us have what we need. And so, the stay-at-home mom on the playground doesn't have what she needs, and she's sort of taking it out. You take it out on the people close to you. We tend to be close to one another, even if we're not in community. And so I think the sort of competition is very explainable by the circumstances that we're living in, and the solution, it's a little hard. I mean, I don't know if we can just do it ourselves. I'm sometimes asked, my research is focused on the intersection of poor maternal mental health and maternal mortality, and I'm often asked by various people, like, what can women do to like reduce their stress? Like, my theory is that it's stress related, right? There's like all of these like various signals that we can't quite wrap our heads around precisely, I think because they're individual to a person and their circumstance and their genetics. But people often ask me, like, what can women do themselves to prevent themselves from dying in childbirth? And then, I don't know, like, you can't do yoga for that. Like, there's no amount of like self-care or baths or something that you can do to prevent that level of thing. And I think that's the level of thing that we're dealing with, that like doesn't allow us to just be like, amazing. Instead we feel, envious and competitive. And I think that's like natural. We should not act on it. We're grown-ups, but
the definition there of scarcity is so interesting, and to me that's an instant reframe, right? You go, because as women there are these systems set up and we're acting within it, and they are not setting us up for success, because none of us are set up for success. We're sort of grasping at where we can and reacting in a way that we shouldn't be reacting.
Like, I want that. That's a good idea. I wish I had that. I wish she didn't have that.
Yeah.
It's Hunger Games.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I think is the optimism for me is that it's changing as we become, and we're at this like really interesting point in time where I think it's like in 3 years we're going to control like the most wealth that women have ever controlled, and there's like a lot of data behind it, and we're also the biggest consumers in America. So it's especially like mothers, like the cost per acquisition on mothers is quadruple any other group that's marketed to. So and where the money is where the power is, which is what we always talk about.
Money and the power. Where is it? No. Sarah, in our conversation, we talked about you have an incredible team that works for you, that leaves at, they have young kids, they leave at 4, blah, 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 they pick up the kids, how great. But then you said something, and then they log back on at 8. Yeah. And then we do this, and this, and this. And I thought, oh, that's so cool. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to log back on. No, it's not. I don't want to log back now.
It's not cool. This was my first story, right? I closed my laptop at 5, and I'm like, great, I'll go be a parent. So then you're a
parent. Which is also work.
Yeah,
it's not work.
Right.
It's also work. So then your work day is
you turn into a house slave for like 3 hours, and then they go to bed, and you clean up a little bit. Then you're like, cool, I'll do all of the work. So it actually has this flexibility, elongates the working time into your personal time. So actually what you're throwing away is your personal time in response to work.
And then there's all this, I'm deep in an Instagram hole right now on divine feminine and, how, I don't know any women that work all day, do bath, books, bed, or I have older kids, so deal with all their bullshit. Did you sign up for the SAT? Whatever. And then do some more work, and then you're like psyched to have sex.
Yeah, no. Is that what that is? The divine feminine makes you want to have
what
sex?
I'm saying is, women are the whole trad wife thing. And people are really talking about being a beta mom, not an alpha mom. Trad wives is like so in the culture, and a lot of other women are talking about I want a soft life. Yeah, because they're like, fuck this shit. I don't want to be on email. I don't want to be on Slack. I don't want to log back in. Yeah. Not only not at 8, I don't want to log in at all.
I think that's sometimes on Fridays, and then I have an entire day with my children on Saturdays, and I'm like, no, I'm ready to go back to work, ready to go.
What if you had a different option? What if it was, now I'm ready to do that hobby that I've always wanted to do? Instead, you just have mom and work.
I know, the two. I do also think it's we spoke about this a lot. I think that one of my systems is time. Right, and I think that in the workplace there has been, for as long as there's been a workplace, value based on time. So the hours you put in versus actually the output, right? And so we need to change that perception from time-based value to output-based value. Also, to my point earlier about the other mothers looking at the time I spend with my kids, don't value the time. Value the quality of that time, right? And I think that right now with AI, the thing that's going to be very, very interesting over the next couple of years is all of the busy tasks are going to be taken away. right? Busy tasks are being taken away, allowing us to have more time for strategic input. And so actually, our output is going to get higher, and our input of just time and hours is going to hopefully reduce. And so I think this could be a really interesting moment for the workforce in general to shift away, because capitalism is capitalism, right? You're not going to be able to say, let's do less output. That's not going to work, because shareholders exist and companies, growth, blah, blah. But if we can produce the same output with less input, how wonderful, right? What is that time that then can free up? And I think as people in the workforce, as leaders, as champions of this, we have to really try and make that happen as it transforms.
Also, it's just, what does work look like? Like, there's a thing of like a slide of a woman walking in the woods, a slide of a man sitting at a computer at a conference room table who's doing work. She's curing cancer with an idea that just popped into her head. He's watching porn. Who's doing work? Who's getting work done? But it looks like the guy's doing work, you know? So we want to move into Q&A?
Can I say one last thing?
Yeah.
It's okay to like to work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sure is.
I think we do it. I think there is a danger too, right? To set the precedent that you log on at 8 to the younger generation, I think is dangerous. But that doesn't make it not okay for you wanting to work at 8.
Yeah, well, I think the bigger point there is make sure you're doing something you love. So, and I know that's like such like a trite thing and not always what everyone can do. But to Sarah's point on time, like, I think that's where we have to start. And it's like, how are you using your time, and get this kind of compartments out of it, right? So, like, yeah, you might have like an idea in the shower, but like, is that like logging on? Or you might be like excited to send an email at 10 p.m. because you just had an idea. And so I'm kind of really obsessed with that notion of like, you have a life, and then you have to figure out how to use it. So like, to be healthy, to look good, to show up in the way we need to be there for your kids when you need to, but it all interplays and interlinks. And I personally think when you try and force separation is where like the misery comes. So that, I think that's a really important point.
But to your point, that only works if you do love it, right? Because if you hate it, or if it's so stressful, then it is just taking every second of your day.
Totally.
And if you love it, that's amazing. You can dip in and dip out. But even if you do, it's so important still to have moments where you completely switch off and go away. You know, this is why vacations are so important. Really, like, throw your laptop away, because then I think you become more inspired, and that's the moments that you have those ideas in the woods.
Yeah, exactly. It's using your time wisely, having time away from your kids. Yeah.
So many things. Motherhood. I'm like so tired of motherhood, because it's like you're talking to somebody today. You know, there's a lot of emphasis on the babies and the young, and and I have a lot of friends in their 50s and 60s. And so, the kids are off. There's ostensibly some money made, right? And then it's sort of like in the bank or whatever. And there's a tremendous burnout. I find for me, I had so much of my identity wrapped up in being a magic maker for others. I just lived for 20 years in an emergency of what do you need? This kid, this client, this. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And now it's like, oh, people need like a little less. And then I'm like, what do I even like to do? How do I like to be in the world? What do I like? And I just don't think society right now is set up, I don't think, for women to enjoy their lives as much as we could enjoy them. Yeah, we get the work done. Sure, we book the jobs, we do the stuff, but I don't think we're having as much fun and pleasure in all of it as we could be. See, I keep trying to talk about sex.
I was going to say, we did not talk about sex. I think somebody in the audience wants to talk about sex. It's very efficient. It's very efficient for this. 8 minutes. I was once giving a talk, and I stopped on the slide. It was like it was Vivi, this healthcare company, and I was talking about pleasure. I was talking about pleasure and parenting and trying to like make there was like a young person like running the slides, and she made it on Zoom so that I was like in my slide, kind of like there was like me in my slide. I've never done that since, but. Someone asked a question, and I stopped to answer the question, and there were like 10 minutes of the talk with me with sex takes 8 minutes above my head. But the point I was trying to make is that it's super efficient. Like, if you don't have time for anything else, you can just have sex. If you like the person who's in your house at that moment and you want to have sex with them, you could do that, and it like does a lot of things for your brain, for your relationship. Like, if you don't have time for like a vacation,
so healthy, right?
It's so healthy. And like we're not, I mean, that's another thing to talk about, like the systems of like attention and time and sex. Like people are not having sex because they bring their phones into their rooms. Everybody in my practice gets a lecture about how phones are the anti-sex. Phones and CPAPs, but at your age...
And television. A CPAP?
Oh, yeah. A CPAP.
Television.
Yeah, screens are the anti-sex. Yeah. Like you will not have sex if there's a phone in your bed. Mm-hmm. People should have more sex. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have brilliant people up here. We have CCOs, we have CEOs, we have doctors, we have creative... Let's have some questions from the audience.
It's a general question for everyone in their fields, like the role of entitlement on the receiver of like women's time or care or knowledge. It feels like there's like that's another unspoken thing. I'm just curious if anyone had any thoughts on
This feels like Alexis.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is sex, because we were just talking about it, but there is this expectation that men are entitled to pleasure and women are supposed to just give it and to be like, what do you need? What do you want? What can I do to make you happy? Da, da, da. And it's just written into our culture and how even marriage is presented to us as like the woman is not the provider, the woman is the giver, and the man is the receiver, but he's also the provider because we don't want to take that power away from him. But I do find even in the most progressive relationships, heterosexual relationships, that there's a feeling of the man feels he deserves sex or, an intimacy, and the woman is like, today I don't really want to, and I don't see why I should just because you want to. And I think that's sort of an undercurrent of relationship imbalances and power imbalances in partnerships.
So I've blown up all the systems, I think, that I was supposed to be living in,
obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I did it on purpose. I don't think I did. And we never talked about this, but there is also a grieving aspect to walking away from this, which is something that is not easy to deal with. Like the idea of, I'm envious. You seem to have a great husband. Like, where the fuck did you find this person? Yeah. Hearing you guys speak.
Although he has been away for a few days.
Right. Makes me jealous. And there is a grieving period that at least I'm still going through. And since I had my daughter, I think even more so than not, of letting go of this idea that I thought that I needed to live, even though I've already let it go. In all aspects, right? I walked away from a long-term relationship. I decided to have a kid by myself. I opened this stupid thing. Not stupid. But there's so many other things I could have done with this, yet I decided to do, something for us and for the soul and the heart, which is important to me. But it's not like I could have just had people live here and then not worry about how to pay the nanny. So I'm just saying, I blew up a lot of systems, and sex is an interesting one because once I walked away from this idea I need, a person in the home, I've been operating differently. And I do text people just to have sex. Because I want to have sex. Because I love having sex, and I know the health benefits. And it's odd, I'm like, I think I am making a booty call.
I want to bring back the phrase, because I want to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. People have said, why did you start a podcast? Because I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's enough of a reason. Why did you get divorced? Because I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. So, we all talk about, the systems that are imposed upon us. But what about making, modeling? We have children. I have grown children. You all have children now. Modeling different kinds of behavior. So not talking about wanting to stay young and what am I going to shoot my face up with. Not talking about I need to diet or lose weight. Modeling. I mean, I had a mother who had me when she was 45. She was very overweight. She was a badass. And then that's what was modeled for me, and I had the advantages and the disadvantages of that mother and of that life. And my kids had the advantages and the disadvantages of being with a divorced mother, someone who had her own business, who wasn't at, Mother's Day breakfasts and didn't have, but you model and you take your agency and you're proud of it, and you say to your kid, I wasn't at breakfast for your school because I was doing something really great, and I didn't want to be there. You have to.
That's not the most important thing happening today. Absolutely. It's good for them.
And not say, well, I would, and also life is a fucking continuum. Sometimes when you're young and you have kids, it sucks. And now I'm older and my kids are older and people say, well, oh, now what are you going to do? You should retire and do you have this? No, I'm working. I'm better at what I do now than I have been in the last 20 years, and I like what I'm doing. So why push me out now? Why am I too old now? I think it's about modeling our behavior for our children. You're modeling for Fiona. You're starting something new. You're natural at this. It's amazing. That's the model. That's what her model is. You're not complaining about, I wish I didn't have wrinkles, or I wish my chin. I don't give a fuck. I have every dinner I'm at with every one of my friends. That's all they want to talk about.
One thing I was actually, you just is like extra solidifies everything we're all saying, but has been interesting for me kind of talking to children about the choices we can make as women, and it's been really important to me that going through a divorce with kids who are old enough to understand but also young enough to have their brains kind of, to your point, making the next generation more accepting of choosing a different way. And it's been really interesting and rewarding, obviously in an age-appropriate way, but being very honest about the reason why, mommy had to make a tough decision, and we, and not just the kind of usual trite language that she's, but being really honest with our kids. That it's hard and we make choices. You will have that conversation with Ronya, and we're going to make a generation of kids who then are more accepting of living in different systems, and all of us are doing that in different ways.
I do think one thing that's common to one thing that we've all coped through, maybe, I don't know, intentional or not, is to do our own thing, to run the shit, to be in charge. I have my own practice because I want to function a little bit outside of the system, some of these more formal systems of medicine. Sarah's we're all independent and working and creating our own spaces and ways to work, in part because we love the work and we want to do it in a way that is respectful of it and respectful of us, and that we can bend to our needs, which is not just this work less thing, that mothers are told. And so I think that taking the power, my kids also know that I love my work, that I'm grateful for it. And my son likes to have me around. He's 10. He likes to have me around more than my daughter does. But if there's a middle of the day thing at his school, I do tell him I can't come because I have to take care of patients, and I want to take care of the patients, and your curriculum share is not important enough for me to cancel patients. People come and wait to see me. And I think I hope, he learned from that two things. One, that it's a good thing and it's a lucky thing, and how fortunate he is to be in a family where, I love my work so much. And also that there are degrees of important. He's 10, he's not the most important person in the family. And I hope for his future, if he has a partner in the future, that person will appreciate his understanding that he's not the most important person in the house.
I grew up with a mom that was working, which was super rare back in the 80s.
The 40s.
Yeah, the 40s. And she didn't come to anything. I mean, my mom never showed up. Piano recitals, tennis matches. And I honestly was so proud of her that she was working. No one else could say that. Looking back, I don't know if she would have worried about this either way. That's a different story, but I was proud of her. And I definitely looked at her thinking, this is great. I don't want to depend. I love cookies, but not enough to be with, to be that part of that family.
But I also think that women, young, especially they're like, I also want to be really proud of myself for not working and for staying at home. And they deserve to be proud of themselves, too. It's a valid choice.
Also, we have to be jealous of someone.
And we have to be jealous.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I wanted to ask about, and this kind of, it's intertwined with like, you know, competition and competitiveness and, you know, the male workplace. And you guys are all CEOs, founders, you have your own practice. Like, what are the things that you do in your workplaces, outside of building them for women as products, to kind of establish a better environment for women? And like, what are little things that other women could do?
I could actively ask my 2 employees right now. I don't even know the answer. I really don't.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I could speak to when I first met Tara, which was almost 4 years ago. And at the time, I really didn't have much experience in sales at all. I was working at this production company for a bit, but mostly restaurants. And Tara took a bit of a chance with me. We got coffee. I was very interested in what she was doing and how she was doing it. And I think how you personally helped me was seeing me and being like, okay, she might not have, you know, a college degree, but she's hungry, she wants to work, she wants to learn. And so I feel like setting up places in which people can prove themselves is very helpful, and that's what she did. So,
That's great.
So taking risks on people.
Yeah.
Like going to bat for somebody young. And
Especially a woman.
yeah.
And that it's such an important thing because, you know, there is no singular female experience either, right? And so I think you have to approach it with that and going, how can I set up each individual within this place for success? And that might be very, very different between 2 women. So there's not going to be one solve that's right for everyone. I think at Havas we're very lucky that I think there's,
but then
80% of our
also
C-suite
the
is female.
systems and the right
right?
eye
And
on the
so I
systems,
think it's
which
both
like
you get
pay
the
equality is
individual
that, and those
approach
things,
and the
factuality,
knowledge of
right?
being a
So
woman. The systems are in place, but the right people have an eye on those systems to make sure they are maintained.
Yeah, and just to always bring it back to capitalism, because this is why people pay attention. And Sarah and I have been talking a lot about this and how to operationalize it. Is women are so valuable and important to the economy. There's so much data around like us leaving the workforce between 40 and 50, and how detrimental that is, and how many billions are lost every year because of mental health issues, and it's like an economic crisis looming. And so I think too often, I worked in a company a long time ago where like maternity leave was talked about as like this nice, like fluffy thing, and there's no conversation about like what happens when people come back. And if we don't like retain and keep women in power, then it's like massively detrimental to the economy. And that's, we developed this thing called Moody at Work, but like that's the only thing that people actually listen to is when it hits the bottom line. So unfortunately, as women, even more, we have to always bring it back to that.
I was actually on a podcast the other day, and the guy doing it, he was quite a young kid and didn't know what he was doing, but he equated maternity leave to a vacation. Oh, yeah. I was talking about vacation. He's like, yeah, like you took a step back for a bit with maternity leave, and I was like, wait, that is not the same thing. But it pieces like that.
Very young to step in.
Very young. But it's like pieces like that that it's just so casually said, like, no, that is not what maternity leave is. And I think as female leaders, we have more of that experience and we come back.
Well, I auctioned off my paternity leave, so someone could
Oh,
go
that's
on a
good.
vacation.
Oh, that's so
No,
cool.
I obviously I couldn't.
they wouldn't let you do that.
I did
Yeah.
wouldn't
Like as
allow me
art,
to
you
do
did that? Like as art?
That's a great
I wanted
idea. I
to.
would have got so
I
much
know,
publicity.
right?
That would be great.
I
The
know.
next exhibition here.
Next time. I think that the individual makes a difference. For me, systems have never really worked. But what has always worked for me was having one single person that believed in me, that would hear me out, that supported me in any shape or form. That worked for me every single time. So to me, it's not about, the name of the agency or wherever you work. Trusting that never, for me personally, worked out. But people always made the difference.
I think one of the things, particularly you, that I found for myself and with other women as we get older in the workplace is if you have ADHD, you go through perimenopause. Yeah. You like a lot of the things that you were able to do when you were younger to kind of bolster around it and it not be as obvious. Yeah. Fall away as you get older, and perimenopause and menopause make it worse. And I don't think it's not really a question as much as a statement.
I agree with you.
I think perimenopause was really fucked up for me with that, and then menopause actually got it. It calmed it down. Yeah. That was a really hard time for me in my 40s. Yeah. The hardest of my life was navigating all of that, and I think there's more women that deal with that than I think is realized.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're pointing to, I agree with, thank you for sharing that. I think it's going to be helpful to somebody else too. I see that a lot in my practice, people coming to, seek psychiatric treatment for the first time in this context. And I think it speaks to, I don't know what your situation was, but I see a lot of people who had like rip-roaring ADHD their whole lives and did not have access to any treatment. Yeah. Even if they ask for it, we're sort of like, you're fine, you have a job, and like, you're not throwing spitballs at people, really, it's another area where people are misdiagnosed. Like, if you're a woman with high IQ, it's actually very hard to get. If you're a girl with high IQ and you're not hyperactive, it's hard to get diagnosed with ADHD appropriately. And then what is really not understood is the emotional dysregulation that is a part of ADHD that is more prominent as a symptom in adults than in children. It's more prominent in adults than in children. We have other parts of our, frontal lobes that are like suppressing the hyperactivity. Adults, and so in perimenopause, the emotional dysregulation piece can get really swingy for people. And again, I just think it's an example of like women kind of walking around with untreated mental health conditions, and then perimenopause kind of makes it even more difficult to cope, and like the work of coping just becomes too much. But the thing is, and I hope this is true of like, the generation behind us, is that there could be less of that. Like, there could be like fewer people walking around with things that could be totally treated. This is what I mean. Like, we know what to do for a lot of people and have successful, helpful treatments for a lot of people, so that when they get to their perimenopause, they have like less to deal with. They're going to have something to deal with, but maybe less.
I've always made it at work. I work with a lot of younger people, and I always say to them, when it hits you in your 40s, come to me. Like,
I know what to do.
I do it all the time. People do.
Yeah, it's generous. Yeah.
Do you find that women are more, I feel like men are like, hey, I'm a guy. Yeah, I get depressed now and again. That's kind of it. I like to work. That's it. Whereas I feel like women are like, I'm perimenopause, I'm dealing with that. I have a little bit of trauma. I got a yeah, like they're so like trying to solve for what is wrong with me.
It's hard. I mean, and the competition comes in, right? Like you put like two smart women in a room and like try to get to like the truth about one of them. Like that's like what I do all day. And it's like hard. It's hard to have people like relax. Like you don't have to solve it. It's like my job to solve it. And obviously your input is super important, obviously. But like that's how but then I take that and then I offer you something back. You don't have to fix it yourself. Yeah. Where I mean, men have it's a different experience. There's like a passivity that men are like.
There's a passivity and an avoidance, and we're like have. And then I have like 7 diagnoses, and then I date. I date people that I know that they have stuff, but they're like, that's fine. You know what I mean?
That's ego and pride, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people are open, though, people are open. Like I don't actually notice a difference there, but I do notice. I think in this sort of like subset of like, hyper competent, hyper compensated women in New York, they come to me like, I read about this and I think this is what I have. And we have to
walk back.
Make sure. A lot of times people are always right about their symptoms, right? Like they're always right about their reported experience, but you can't just like read and make your diagnosis always.
How often are they right, though?
I think in the right area, almost always. Yeah. But usually there's something to add.
Yeah. No, I'm not questioning that part.
But I think people are in the right ballpark a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm assuming the answer might be capitalism.
Always.
It normally is.
but I kind of did the homework assignment like a little loser back here. And the first word I wrote down for like a system I'd love to like crack is progress. So like I recently, this might be kind of for Carla, one, because I love you, girl, and two, because it's like women's health related, but recently had an experience, have to have a hysterectomy, have to have mess of the uterus, fibroids, C-sections, endometriosis, all the things. And what they told me I could do for it was birth control, which was, you know, what I, same answer quite literally 30 years ago. And it felt, you know, you come out and I was prepared, like this is not going to be a good meeting no matter what, but just broke down, like where is the progress, you know? And the other side, we've made so much fucking progress. So why isn't it shared enough? Like the successes that we've had and the wins that we've had, whether it's women's health or women in work, or because it is all so connected, I'm going to have to take time off to have a hysterectomy. Why isn't it more widely shared? It's like, are we not adequately sharing it, or are we not seeing it?
So obviously, like having a women's health business and being in talent, you know, I think about this exact thing all the time. But I also very sadly lost my brother to cancer a couple of years ago, and he lived here, and so I was very, very up close in a very broken system. And the thing I learned was exactly what you were saying. I'm like, I'm inside all these terrible hellscapes of people walking around, getting radiation, like hooked, you know, thousands of people. And I was like, fucking hell, there is a whole other planet of incredibly sick people. And I think a lot of it is that we just out of sight, out of mind. And even, you know, now I'm kind of guilty, but I'm like, I can't look at a hospital anymore. Like I had too many years of being inside them. So I think there's a little bit of that. I think the other really big lesson I learned is you have to be your own connective tissue. So doctors, to your earlier point, are trained in their individual fields. So I had oncologists telling me, just eat a pizza and you'll be fine. I'm like, oh, really? How many hours of nutrition training did you have? And they're like, 4. So you have to Kristen's point, is you have to learn what they know and what they don't know, and then you have to be the connective tissue, and then you have to bring everybody together. And I think to your point about talking about it more, that's also on us, right? Because we have been trained and groomed to suffer in silence, and that's what Alexis's work brought to the forefront. Like, it isn't all happy and amazing, and there's like pretty gnarly shit that goes on, but even when I had my first kid 10 years ago, it was very much in the like, get a blowout and walk down the street and be thin right away. And the glory and what the desire is for everyone. Oh, you were doing so great. Yeah, and I don't know what you would add.
I mean, I think to your point about progress in women's health, like in OBGYN in particular, is really frustrating. I mean, I don't have an answer for it, but like, you know, if you look at the things that we sort of lament, they're stubborn. You know, people's pain are not taken seriously, neither in an individual patient visit nor in, you know, the research into endometriosis. Like, there really just isn't any. I think there's something hysterical. We were talking about this, and like one of my observations of like, you know, the sort of systems that I've been in, systems of medicine that I've been in, I think if you combine pain and pelvis, the system gets hysterical, where people are sort of like, we don't, like something's wrong, you know, this isn't, and then you become a difficult patient. And like, if you don't get better, then you're a difficult patient, and then if you're complaining of pain, then you're like annoying, and if you're, you know, and you're not grateful, and then there really isn't anybody paying attention. This breaks my heart. Students sometimes ask me, if I give a talk about maternal mortality, if I put up these slides, I sit on the city's maternal mortality review board, and we review every maternal death that happens in the city. And every year, the number is the same. The number has stabilized. It kind of goes up or down by 1 or 2 people each year, but it is not going down in New York City. And the proportion of deaths caused by mental health conditions is going up. The number 1 cause of maternal mortality in the United States, it's not true in every state, but it's true in New York City, is mental health conditions. People think it's infection or hemorrhage or blood clots, cardiac issues. It's suicides and overdoses. In New York City, overdoses more than suicides. But that number is stubborn, and every OBGYN conference you go to, people are talking about how upset they are about it. But you can't have it both ways. Like, you're either upset or you're not, and we either care or we don't. And I think our actions say that we don't care. It's not that important to us.
But we also have a medical system where preventative care is not covered.
I have to say, moving from the UK to the US I still find the U.S. medical system completely terrifying. Incomprehensible.
You're right
I
to.
don't understand
You're right
it. It's a bizarre world to me from the NHS where you can just walk in and get anything.
And it keeps us in systems of marriage that people don't want to be in. It keeps us in work that we don't want to do. I can't tell you how many people that don't get divorced, don't leave their jobs, don't make moves in life, and they don't create because of health insurance.
But we can buy insurance. Like, I don't quite understand. I mean, all insurance is bad. Like, even if you work, even if you have a good job and you pay a great deal of money and you still pay for that insurance, like, even if you work and your employer, like, covers it for you, you can buy, like, bad health insurance on the exchange privately.
You know, talking about all these systems, I appreciate that you shared this because I think that's a much better conversation to be had than to sit at dinner and talk about wrinkles.
Yeah.
And it's on us, right? Like, it's on us to have these conversations. It's on us to change the dinner table convo.
Yeah, and to have them with men. And I know we have to wrap, and I think we're going to do one just on health. And I learned this very sadly the hard way with my brother, but being sick is a massive business, right? So again, it's like you always have to go follow the money. And then on to Bridget's point with her, we have to talk to men. You know, I talk to men nonstop about periods and cycles and hormone. Like, we talk to men about hysterectomy, and a lot of them kind of, you know, I was pitching to male VCs about how profitable periods are, and they were like, can I just ask my wife? And, you know, and now it's like one of the most, like, femtech is one of the most profitable categories in the world. But I think it's like taking away that awkwardness, and we're all starting to do that, but that's really important.
So one of my biggest passions is the concept of community and third spaces outside of work and outside of the home where we can gather, we can share, we can be. Because, right, like church, no one goes to church anymore. We don't really have those kinds of spaces. So it's a hope that this series can be a part of a third space where we can have some real talk about this.